happen later on, and we'll see if it happens. Did you know that Satan can only predict the future 10 to 25% of the time? Even though he's got all of the history, he's lived the whole 6,000 years, he is still miserable when it comes to predicting what's going to happen in the future. But God predicts it 100% correct. Show the things that are to come hereafter, that we may know that ye are gods. Yea, do good or do evil. Now, he's not suggesting that they should sin. He's saying you can do some amazingly good things and some amazingly bad things, like sending a pandemic. You can do those things to show what your power is, that we may be dismayed and behold it together. Behold, ye are of nothing, and your work of naught. An abomination is he that chooseth you. God considers idolatry an abomination. Why? Because it ruins human beings, destroys them, the ones that were made in his image, that he might be able to exalt them into a very high estate. He considers that an abomination. In Isaiah 42:17 it says, they shall be turned back, they shall be greatly ashamed. So the day is coming, and has for many idols of the past, that people come to the point where they're ashamed that they worship that idol because it was a waste of time. That trust in graven images, that say to molten images, ye are our gods. In chapter 43, 10, 11, and 13, understand that I am he. Before me there was no God formed, neither shall there be after me. I, even I, am the Lord, and beside me there is no Savior. Yea, before the day was, I am he. And there is none that can deliver out of my hand. I will work, and who shall let, which we know means hinder, and who shall hinder it? Nobody can stop what God does, not even Satan himself. Now, I remember when the pandemic was sort of new, and I told my congregation, I may have said it here, I don't remember as well, but I said, you know what? We don't need to be afraid of this pandemic. Because number one, we might get a light case. Number two, if we get a severe case, God is able to raise us up. And if we die, it's his will, and it's the best thing for us to die. Well, what I found is that was easy to say back then. And then I caught COVID. In fact, both my wife and I got it. Now, I don't think ours was a severe case, but it wasn't a little case either. It was at least a medium case. And I wasn't sure for a while what was going to happen. I wish my faith had been stronger, in harmony with my statement ahead of time. But the Lord brought me through it. And so now my faith is a lot stronger because I'm on the other side of this now. And what God had to do, just briefly for those that haven't already heard, the first thing that happened was, before I got very sick at all, the Lord impressed us to go and be tested, and sure enough, we both were testing positive. So my wife, unfortunately, even though she had the COVID herself, she was so determined to save me because my lung condition is very serious. I'm at the top of the list to die from COVID. And so she started giving me hydrotherapy treatments twice a day. And you know what? My lungs stayed in good shape the whole time. There was a little dip for a while. We took oxygen at a very small level for 2-3 days and then dropped it because it wasn't needed. And the Lord set up a contact in Brazil, where in Brazil they freely use a medicine called ivermectin. And this has been proven to be extremely effective in COVID cases. Well, it just so happened that somebody was flying from their facility to the U.S. that very day. And so they gave them the ivermectin. It arrived about 8 days after into the COVID. And it was a little box with 4 pills in it. By the time I took the second pill, my temperature went down and never went up again. And by the 4th pill, I was beginning to recover. It was a long road to recover because I could hardly eat. Nothing tasted good. Food was the last thing I was interested in. And as you can see, I can't go too long without food. So the Lord was really good. And I've never wanted to serve an idol, although I have served some, I'm sure, in the past. But this has convicted me. There's no point in serving anybody else but God. He is the one that can do anything. And if he doesn't do it, there's a purpose why he doesn't do it. So why should we fool around with any idols? Isaiah 46, to whom will you liken me? And make me equal, and compare me, that we may be like. They lavish gold out of the bag, and weigh silver in the balance, and hire a goldsmith. You know, one thing is interesting. Idols usually are very expensive. You got to pay a lot of money. And he maketh it a god. They fall down, yea, they worship. They bear him upon the shoulder. They carry him and set him in his place, and he standeth. He wouldn't be able to stand if it wasn't that people put him in his place. From his place shall he not remove. He can't go anywhere. You remember Elijah in that story? Elijah said, maybe your God is sleeping, and you got to wait till he wakes up. Aren't you serve a God that doesn't sleep? And he said, maybe he's on a journey. You'll have to wait till he gets back. They bear him upon the shoulder, they carry him, and set him in his place, and he standeth. From his place shall he not remove. Yea, one shall cry unto him, yet can he not answer, nor save him out of his trouble. Sometimes people have to get to that point before they realize that their idol is of no value. In chapter 46, 9-11, remember the former things of old, for I am God and there is none else. I am God and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times the things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure, calling a ravenous bird, which is if you look at the context, it's a reference to Cyrus who would conquer Babylon, because the chapter before is talking about the destruction of Babylon. Calling a ravenous bird from the east, the man that executeth my counsel from a far country. God said exactly how Cyrus was going to take over the city of Babylon. Amazing. Yea, I have spoken it. I will also bring it to pass. I have purposed it. I will also do it. Now let's look at another definition before we look at what might be some of our idols of today. Hopefully, from what we've read, you can see the foolishness of serving an idol. In the book Lift Him Up, page 142, it says, whatever divides the affections. Are you wholeheartedly serving God? Or is there something else that you're trying to serve at the same time? If your affections are divided, then you have an idol. Number 2, takes away from the heart's supreme love for God. So if there is a diminishing of the supreme love for God, which basically could be expressed, Lord, I am willing to endure whatever you want me to endure. I'm willing to go any place you want me to go, or I'm willing to stay where I don't want to stay. My whole life is at your disposal to use as you see best. That is the supreme love for God. Or number 3, prevents unlimited confidence and entire trust in Him. Well, I thought I had that before COVID, but it wasn't quite as good as I thought. But now I hope it is. And so, but we often have to go through many experiences to come to the place where we have unlimited confidence and entire trust in Him. We're going to need that for the future, because, we can read about persecution, we can read about what's coming, but it's not like being in it. That, all 3 of those things, assumes the character and takes the form of an idol. There is allowed no separation of our affections from God. Nothing can separate our affections from God. Nothing is to divide our supreme love for Him or our delight in Him. Now here's some of the things we have to surrender. Your will, wishes. I sure didn't want to catch COVID. I could guess that it's very likely that I would die. Or at least I was totally at the mercy of God, and He might decide that I would die. Your will, wishes, plans. Those are hard to change. When you get it in your mind, you want to accomplish something. Desires, things that you long for. There's probably some single people here. And some of you probably long to be married, and you didn't get married. And pleasures must all be in subjection. Can you say, it's okay, Lord, if I never get married? It's okay, Lord, if I don't get the pleasures that I would really like to have? All these things. If you can't, you got an idol. And a little farther down on that same page, it says, when one is fully emptied of self, when every false god is cast out of the soul. Now that looks attractive, doesn't it? But to surrender all the idols often does not look attractive at first, at least. till we read some of those quotations that we read, and that should help us to do it. When one is fully emptied of self, when every false god is cast out of the soul, the vacuum is filled by the inflowing of the Spirit of Christ. Wow. I hope that sounds really good to you this morning. So that you would be willing to say, Lord, do I have any idols in my life? Are there any things that are hindering my relationship with you or my commitment to you or whatever, something that's hindering? You know, I'll tell you one more experience, and that is that as a child, there was only one thing I wanted to do, and that was to be a pastor. My dad was a pastor, and for some reason I inherited that desire. And so I set my direction to become a pastor. And when I got right to the point where I would take the final step to become a pastor, the Lord said, "You're going to Wildwood." Now, I knew that if I went to Wildwood, it was very, very unlikely I would ever become a pastor. But the Lord made it clear that we were supposed to come here. And so I said, okay, Lord, if I never become a pastor, it's okay. That's the place. Well, I didn't say it at the very beginning, but after about 6 months of being here, I realized, no, the Lord has called me to this. This is the work that he has for me to do. And so it was at that point that I made that decision. It's okay, Lord, if I never become a pastor. Now, I did get to do things that a pastor does. And so that was a blessing. But in God's providence, the time came where he said, you need to be a pastor. And then later, after a few years, he said, you're going to get ordained as a pastor. I was shocked. It was amazing that that was going to happen. And so sometimes the Lord only asks you to give up things in your heart, but there are other times that you don't have it because you were willing to make him first in your life. Now let's just look quickly in closing at some of the popular idols. This is not a complete list. Basically, anything can be an idol. Anything. Number one, a person. Often when people are courting, they make an idol out of the other person. They don't know them very well, and they think, oh, they're just wonderful. You know, the sun rises and sets on them. And then you marry them and you find out, well, it's not quite like that. Or it might be a good speaker like Doug Batchelor or Mark Finley, and boy, when they're going to speak, people flock there. And I'm not saying we shouldn't listen to them, but, you know, some of those people that flock to them are making them an idol. And you know what happens a lot of times? That if those people make a mistake, let's say they commit adultery, let's hope they never do. Oh, then they're dirt. Because we exalted them above where they ought to be, and then when we find they're not like we thought they were, we put them lower than what they ought to be. Number two, your possessions. You know why Lot's wife looked back? She could not stand to leave her children in that beautiful mansion that she lived in. Not even to save her own life. She just couldn't handle it. Your possessions, or if you don't have a lot of possessions, your desire to possess. And of course, money is a really big one, motivates so many people. You pay them more money, They'll quit where they are and go working there. You know, money is such an idol because in this world, money can do a lot of things, but God can do more than money. Sports is a big one. Either being involved in sports or following professional sports characters and so on. It's a big idol. Number 5, your talents. Maybe God has given you some special gifts and you can do some wonderful things, but God can help you to do more. And the more you recognize that He's the one that helped you, the better He can use your talents. But if we get all wrapped up in these like a God and we just think we're wonderful, then God has to back off. And He can't work through us like He would like to. Number 6, having an important position. You know, in our society, to be somebody is very important. And to go after it, most people, not everybody, but most people who go after it may be able to get it because they figure out how to get it. And they have that important position that they longed to have. But God might call us to be a nobody in a sense. Not that anyone will go to heaven and be a nobody, because everybody that follows Jesus will have fruit from their labors. But on earth, we might not be considered anybody. Are we willing to give up our idols so that the God of the universe can do what He's able to do for us and through us? May the Lord help each of you as you go home to at least pray once about it and say, Lord, am I worshiping any idols? If I am, please reveal that to me. And help my mind to dwell upon the wonderful power that you have, which can benefit me more than anything. You know, today so many young people feel benefited by their cell phones or internet connections. God can do more than what that cell phone or those programs that you look at. He can do more than that. And He wants us to taste it so that we can see for sure. But He can't do it until we say, okay, I'll give up the idol. May God help us to become clean of idols. There were times, you know, in the history of Israel where they put away all the idols. I believe now is the time for Seventh-day Adventists to put away all idols. May God help you and bless you as you seek to do that.